Hey team, this is the video for the week 5 lecture. In this video we'll be having a brief look into reverbs as well as some width techniques. I'll use the same song that was used in the last video where we applied equalization and high pass filtering and low pass filtering to help separate sounds in the mix within the frequency spectrum, giving them their own space to live. So yes, reverb. So let's have a brief look at using reverb as a way of further enhancing the separation of the different sounds in the song. For these examples, we aren't using reverb to add a lot of character to a sound, we're using it more subtly. Again, to help give already established elements in your track their own space in the mix to live. Okay, so a lot of reverbs are divided into two separate parts: early reflections and reverberation. Having a simple understanding of early reflections and reverberation can help you conceptualize how you might use reverb to work for you. So first, early reflections. These are sounds that arrive at the listener after being reflected maybe once or twice from different parts of the listening space, such as walls, ceilings, and the floor. They arrive later than the direct sound, much like a delay. The early reflections give your brain the information about the size of a room and the sense of distance when it comes to the sounds in a room. So when you clap your hands, you get the direct signal straight into your ears, and then you get the early reflections, where the sound bounces off the walls, roof and floor first, and then back into your ears. The beginning of the reverb, some might say. Now, reverberation. This is when the early reflections carry on bouncing around the room for a while before eventually making it back into your ears. Okay, that's what we call reverberation. So let's look at some practical examples of how we might use this to create some separation. So here we have, I think we'll just use the guitars for this example. And here I've set up two separate reverbs on return tracks. So I can send these guitar parts to these reverbs here. So one of them I've set up with early reflections. Here's my reverb here. This is my early reflections reverb on return channel A. I've turned the diffuse right down so all we can hear the early reflections part of this reverb. And on this reverb here on the B return track, we've done the opposite. We've turned all the reflections down, the early reflections down, and the diffuse right up. So we're going to use this channel A for our early reflections, and this channel B for our reverb. So back to the concept of this tune, let's remind myself, yes, so this first guitar we wanted to image a bit closer than this second guitar. The second guitar is the melodic part. Let's have a listen to this second guitar. We've taken off quite a lot of the top end of this guitar. A lot of highs off it because we're wanting it to sit further back than this rhythm guitar here. I know that might kind of sound a bit counterintuitive. You'd think you'd want the melodic guitar up close, getting your attention more. But I think the reason why we put this melodic guitar further back by taking the highs off was because we knew there were vocals in this part of the song too, and we didn't want the two melodic parts, the vocals and the guitar melody, conflicting with each other too much. So again, we're going to try and enhance the separation we've already done. The guitar 1, the rhythm guitar, is imaging a little closer than the guitar 2. Just a little closer. If I take the EQ off, I think you'll hear that the melodic guitar is very close. Yeah, no doubt the melodic guitar is closer. So again, let's turn these EQs back on. So the melodic guitar is a bit further back in the mix, and the first guitar, the rhythm guitar, is close. So first off, I'm going to apply some early reflections to this guitar 1. This is the rhythm guitar, and this is how I'm going to send some of this guitar to the early reflections return track. There's a bit more than I'd usually add, but just for the sake of this, to make it clear that it's there, I'll turn it up a bit more. I turn the early reflections off. If you're in a room with a guitarist and they're playing and they're sitting right in front of you, when they strum the guitar, you're going to get a lot of early reflections information, because you're close to the guitar, you're close to the same walls that guitarist is close to. So when they strum, it's going to the sound is going to fly out of the guitar to the walls and back into your ears. You're going to get some early reflection information. If that guitarist was at the very end of a big hall, let's say, and they were strumming the guitar, you're not going to get much early reflection information, because their early reflections, by the time they get to you, they would have blurred up by bouncing off all the walls and the roof. They would have bounced off a whole lot of things before they even got to you. So if you want a sound to image close to you, you're going to want to add some early reflections to it, or that can help. Also make it sound a bit more natural. If you're using a synthesizer, for example, which has no reverb on it at all, quite often you'd want to add a bit of early reflections to it just to make it sound a bit more natural, like it's in a space. So with this guitar 2, the second guitar, the melodic part that we want to image further away, we're going to add some reverb to it, but maybe no early reflections. We want it to sound as if it's further away. So let's just solo this melodic guitar part, and I'm going to give it some reverb. There's quite a lot. This with, now without. Okay, remembering the goal here is to add separation. We want these guitars to appear further away from each other. Okay, so just going to set up a little fast key here. Okay, so these are the guitars with no reverb at all. The imaging kind of close to each other. Now I'm going to turn the reverb on. They definitely seem like, definitely feel like they're further away from each other now. I'm using more reverb than I would usually use. It's not subtle at all. Let's turn it down a little bit more. Let's try this out. So this is without. And with. Without. So it's definitely helped give them a bit of space. The melodic guitar feels a little further away now, and that's helping. So that's all we're going to look at for reverb. Okay, this is just one way to approach it. Some of the best reverb plugins out there, like the Lexicon, it's an amazing reverb. Kind of denies this kind of theory and just says reverb's reverb. If it sounds good and it's working, and it doesn't really focus on the early reflections or the reverberation too much. It kind of just applies them all together, and it's an amazing reverb. But I think if you can get your head around the concept which we looked at today, which is basically short delays and early reflections, they're useful for sounds that you want to be imaging a bit closer, when maybe a longer reverb tail can help sounds that you want to be sitting further back in the mix, is basically what we're getting at here. So I think it's time to look at some width techniques. What have we got here? Yes, so width. Width is a great tool to help clear up the center of a mix. The center of your mix is a really special place, as usually the vocals, kick drums, snares, and bass want to occupy it. That's where quite often you'd have your all of those elements imaging. Other instruments like guitars, synth, and percussion can add clutter to the center of the mix, and in turn the center loses focus. So sending some elements out wide can really help. We're going to look through these three techniques. There's many more ways of making things wide, but these are very common ones that are easy to set up, and some will work better in different situations. So let's try out some of these. Let's have a look at some synths. So the first one is double track pan, hard left and right. What that means is recording the same part twice, the exact same part twice, panning one left and panning one right. The subtle differences and nuances in the way you performed it, that there'll be slightly different timing. Maybe you hit, maybe one of the chords that you played was slightly different. You did a different voicing. These differences, when panned hard left and hard right, really help things appear to sit out wide. Okay. So let's have a listen to this. This is the original synth part. Okay, I've got that exact same synth part right here. I've panned it hard left, and I've re-recorded those chords for a second time, and I've put them in this clip here. The panned hard left and hard right, and let's listen to the width effect. Cool. This is the original. And now this is the wide. You can hear it's plain as day, the difference there. So this would come in handy if you had something in the middle of your mix in the center, like bass, for example, which you don't want, and you don't want the synth to occupy too much of the center space. Let's just use this as an example. Okay, so here's the original synth with some bass in the mix too. And now we're going to listen to the wide synth with the bass. Original synth. And now Now listen to how the bass has its own space now when we bring in the wide synths. Again, this is the original synth. Now the wide synth. Cool. Let's have a look at another one of these techniques here. The duplicate element and change the pitch of it. Again, we pan them to opposing sides, one hard right and one hard left. So here we have some percussion. There's a little percussion loop. And what I've done is I've duplicated that over here. So I've got the exact same percussion loop here. This is panned hard left, and we've got the exact same percussion loop here. This one's panned hard right, but this one we've tuned down by one semitone. So it's a slightly different pitch. Okay, I'm going to do that same key mapping, D to D. Okay, so this is the original. This is the original one here we're listening to. Now we'll go to the wide. Original. Sits right in the middle, center of the mix, and now it's centered out wide. I found with percussion and claps, things that aren't too harmonic, this technique works really well, the pitch one. So, in fact, let's have a listen to everything. Let's have a listen to everything. And we'll go cool. So this is with no width at all on the synths and no width at all on the perc. And now we're going to go wide with the percussion and wide with the synth. Take the wide away. The whole point of this is to give the bass some space, okay? So let's listen to this again, and we're not listening to whether the synths are wide or if the percussion is wide. Let's listen to the bass and how width helps give the width on these other elements gives the bass some space to live. So this is the original. And now let's make it wide. Original. Wide. Cool. My synth parts that I recorded were quite different to each other. The timing was quite different. So it kind of gave the impression that it was panning from right to left sometimes, and sometimes from left to right, because my timing was a bit shaky. But you get the idea. So those two techniques, with the synthesizer, we double tracked it, panned it hard left and panned it hard right. and the subtle differences between the way I performed the song, the synth part, is what gives the nuances that makes it sound wide when you pan it hard left and right. The second one we looked at was duplicating the element. This was the percussion, panning it hard left and the other one hard right, and changing the pitch of one of them. Now let's look at one more. Duplicate element and drag it out of time with the original. Again, panning them to opposite sides. Panning them is quite a big common technique here when it comes to making things out wide. Duplicating, affecting the duplicate in some way, making it different, effectively, slightly different, and panning them left and right. So here's the guitar track that I'm going to use for this. Okay, so here's the original guitar part. It's exactly the same as this one. I've made a duplicate and I've dragged it a bit out of time. Okay, so let's listen to the original guitar part. And now I'll go to the wide one here. 3, 4. So yes, it's clearly gotten quite wide. And this is called the Haas effect. You get the exact same part. You pan them hard left and hard right and drag one of them slightly out of time. It gives us a delayed effect. That is pretty much it. Again, these width techniques are really useful for clearing up the center of your mix. If you've got a lot of things going on in your mix, you've got heaps of strings and keyboards and guitars and vocals and bass. If you've got a lot of elements, the width can be really, really handy. So yes, they are the 3 techniques there. So spaces that you have at hand. This is for stuff for your assessment. You've got obviously your left speaker, you've got your right speaker, you've got the center of your mix if you had nothing panned at all. You've got width, you can use the techniques we were just looking at, and you've also got depth with contrasting elements, equalization, and reverb. So you got some things to experiment with here to keep within the theme of the original assessment of making a spatial piece of music with 4 speakers. Unfortunately, we've only got stereo for this assessment now, but you've got a lot of things here to work with that you can you take advantage of. Yeah, so all of these examples that we looked at today were a typical applicable to typical commercial recording. They're really, really common techniques. Keeping your bass in the middle and your vocals in the middle and your kick and snare in the middle of your mix right down the center is really, really common for commercial recordings. But for your assessment, please feel free to not comply with the norm at all. I mean, really, please break these rules. Pan your bass hard left if you need to. Go wild. Just make sure there's a reason for these decisions. That your techniques align with your concept. Okay. That is us for now. I'll see you on Wednesday at 2 o'clock to talk about some of these techniques and also answer any other questions you guys might have in regards to this assessment. And yeah, good luck with it all. Ciao.